Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to talk about this beautiful, lovely, incredibly well made, and just not at all daft Rogue Trader land speeder that will be available from Forge World sometime soon. You can see it right here, ta-da, and I was lying. It's not beautiful and it's not lovely. It is unfathomably ugly. It might be one of the ugliest models I've ever laid eyes on. And let's face it, some of the old stuff from Games Workshop, it was pretty ugly. I mean, it somehow, despite the fact that it is an updated, reimagined, kind of modernised version of the original Rogue Trader land speeder, which you can see next to it, it's somehow, and I don't even know how they've done this, kind of uglier even than that. That at least had some sort of redeeming quality. I think the old Rogue Trader land speeder, because it looks so old, kind of gets away with looking as ugly as it does. It's like well, it's not great, but it's the best they can do kind of thing. The new one does not have that quality. It does not have that excuse. It's just two turbines with a couple of ski lift chairs attached in front of it, and a multi-melter which, frankly, is placed in such a way that I would imagine if either of the Marines in that thing, either the pilot or the gunner, were to look up slightly too far, they would lose a significant chunk of both their helmet and their head if they actually fired that gun at the same time. It doesn't look great, but I want to make the case for it, because I've seen quite a few people talking about this. There's been any number of discussion threads popping up on Reddit and different forums and so on. And I've seen a couple of comments that basically amount to, why even make this? It's so ugly, it's so hideous, it's so dated and not good, why even bother? And whilst that is fair, and I do agree that it is a truly god-awful looking thing, I think it still has its place, and I still like the fact that it's been made. I still like the fact that they've attempted to bring that model up to date. The thing is, it is ugly and it is hideous to look at, and it is impossible to modernise, and it does look like the most unsafe piece of floating garbage you've ever seen. But that's not a reason to not make it, and that's not a reason to not try and bring out stuff like this. A lot of the Rogue Trader era things didn't look great. I mean, they were cool and they were impressive for their time, and there were some interesting and kind of unique concepts behind them, but let's be honest, they didn't look great. Like the Land Raider Proteus, for instance, is not a particularly good looking tank. It's just a weird box on tracks, and that's about as far as that design goes. The reimagined version of it looks way better. Like, the modern version of it looks way better. But it's still ugly. It's still not a attractive design. In fact, when you look at pretty much all of the Imperial stuff, it's all kind of ugly. It's all ugly and it's all dated. That's part of its charm. You're not buying, like, Lehman Russes for your Imperial Guard army because they look like the epitome of what a modern tank should be. Because they don't. They are, much like every other Imperial vehicle that involves being a tank, just a weirdly shaped box on tracks with no discernible sort of suspension whatsoever, so presumably the second they reach uneven ground they'll be unable to move. They have ridiculous, just flat surfaces everywhere that are prime for getting blown the shit out of. Side sponsons don't exist anymore for a fairly good reason. They're not good designs, but it doesn't matter because they fit the Imperial, like, aesthetic, I suppose is the best way to put it, even though that word has been hijacked somewhat these days. Imperial stuff doesn't look good, but it functions, and that's the best you can ask of it. It's not going to win any design awards, but it will faithfully serve you in battle, and if you're lucky you might get to actually keep it at the end of it. You know, if it doesn't get blown up or have a bit shot off it, or have the occupants murdered in some sort of horrendous demon infestation, you might even get to take your tanks home with you again. they're there for a purpose, not to look nice. I mean, when you look at stuff like, especially Eldar vehicles, Warwalker aside, because it looks terrible, they're a lot more elegant, they're a lot more sleek. You can't really say that Rogue Trader era Landspeeder shouldn't have been made purely because it's ugly. That's an argument I've seen a couple of times. You can't say that, because on that basis, a significant number of things that the Imperium uses should not be made because they're ugly. They don't look good. They look awesome, and I love them. I mean, if you're sitting there thinking, why are you hating on Imperial vehicles? I mean, I've got a Land Raider back there, and a Typhon Heavy Siege tank, and there's an Imperial Knight up there, and there's like 3 Dreadnoughts lying around this place. There's also a Demolisher in there, and there's a Rhino in there, and a Razorback somewhere else. There's Imperial vehicles galore around here. There are boxes, metal boxes for days. They might be ugly, but I still love them because they have that functional feel. They have that kind of dated but still going look to them. So you can't argue that Rogue Trader era Landspeeder shouldn't exist because it just looks terrible. Yeah, it does look terrible, but that's not a reason to say that they shouldn't have made it. I've seen other comments along the lines of, well, why would you even buy it? You've got like Javelin Landspeeders, you've got jet bikes for Horus Heresy, you've got all kinds of stuff that fulfills that model's purpose without looking the way it does, without being as clunky and daft as that, because it is kind of daft. But I think there's a key element to this stuff that, in a way, it doesn't matter if it fulfills the same roles. Like, the reason for buying a Land Raider Proteus for me is not because it's like a better Land Raider. It's not because it's in some way superior to other Land Raiders. It's because it looks like the original Land Raider, but better. This looks like that Landspeeder, but better. It's not necessarily in existence so that people can flood their battlefields with it. It's not necessarily in existence so that you can create a squadron of 20 of these idiots and have them flying round. It's a nostalgia piece. And to be honest, it's kind of funky. As a nostalgia piece, as a display piece, as something to have to remind you of the Rogue Trader days, to kind of evoke that feeling of getting into the hobby for the first time. To be honest, it's kind of cool. And there are other models as well that I would absolutely be down for. This one, I'll be honest, it's not for me. But if Forge World came out with this, again, like a rescaled, updated, modernised version of this Chaos Dreadnought, you know, longer legs, better posing, the body bigger to match current Dreadnought dimensions, complete with the the spike snapped off on this, complete with the ridiculous spike that came up to there and was bent and wonky even on the box. I don't have a Chaos Army anymore. I haven't had a Chaos Army for years. My Iron Warriors stuff went, I think, probably got sent to a car boot sale many years ago. But I still have this. And I would absolutely buy this again. If you showed me this in resin, this exact model, with that old style plasma cannon, with that classic Chaos Dreadnought close combat weapon, I'd buy it. I mean, look at it. That is fucking ugly. It looks terrible. It's really not good. It's stumpy. The head looks really off. It's like, why is it so far down? I mean, people talk about the Redemptor Dreadnought having a bit of a beer gut. This is the original beer gut Dreadnought. Like, the actual sarcophagus is there. It's all the way down. It hangs below the body. The head is like halfway down the torso. The dimensions are off. The legs are spindly and immovable. They're also stumpy. The close combat weapon, I mean, look at it. That's not going to do anything to anyone. It's way too big. It's like wider than the body of the Dreadnought. it doesn't look good. It's not particularly better than any other model that you could get. As a unit, it's not better than any other unit that you could get. And yet, I would absolutely buy this again because it's a great nostalgia thing. Something being ugly is not a reason for it not to exist in terms of 40k. Something not taking the place of another unit or being better than an existing unit is again not a reason for it not to exist. That Rogue Trader era Landspeeder is unquestionably hideous. It is unquestionably dated and daft. It makes no sense. It's just two massive engines with a gun on top that is liable to kill the occupants of the vehicle when it fires. The occupants have got absolutely no additional cover whatsoever. They're just sat out in the open in a rather relaxed and casual pose. And yet, as a reinterpretation of that original Landspeeder, it's pretty fucking cool. I like it. It's awful, but I still like it. Question is, do you like it? Do you think it's shit? Do you think it's awful? Would you buy it anyway? Do you think it actually has a bit of charm to it? Do you think it is actually quite a nice looking model? And if so, get your eyes tested maybe? Be interested to hear what you think about this. I don't see there to be a reason for them not to keep making this stuff. I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. As always, there's the usual array of things to click all over the screen. There's a couple of videos, there's a Patreon, there's subscribe, all of that shit. Click it if you like, don't click if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.